Namaha Bhavtam Sarvesham Hartam Swagatam. Welcome back to this channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And moving on in a series Learning Sanskrit through Gita. Today we are decoding 24th shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And this particular shloka again is a continuation of what we saw in the previous shloka, the 23rd shloka that we covered in the last video. So just a continuation of that thought. But from grammar point of view, from Sanskrit point of view, we are going to dive a bit deeper into how a suffix, how a pratyay, it actually modifies a dhatu to create, for example, a kridanta. So I hope all of you are at least comfortable with these terms, kridanta and pratyay and all that. And we have often seen how pratyay suffixes, they modify a dhatu or a pratipadika to create a new word, a new entity. So we will just dive a bit deeper using the examples given in the shloka. So from grammatical point of view, we are going to learn something new, I hope. So without wasting any more time, let's quickly dive in today's video. Okay, so this is the shloka that we have today. Let me go through the shloka once. Achedyo yamadakyo yamakledyo shoshya evacha nitya sarvagatasthanu achaloyam sanatanaha. Okay, this is the shloka and this again is the Sandhi Vichcheda of the shloka. So we have all the terms separated. We have seen such instances before also that all the words in one or two lines, they are all combined into a single word using different Sandhi niyama. So this entire line is these many different words. And see as to what Sandhis are happening. So you can see here, here and here. All these three instances, a same Sandhi is happening, Ukara Sandhi. That you have a aha in the Purva Pada, you have a aha that is followed by a of the Uttar Pada. So this is the Ukara Sandhi. So this same Sandhi is happening in all these three instances. And that is why you can see the same kind of change also. The aha changing into O along with this Avagraha Chinna. Okay, and apart from this, this is just a normal combination how any halanta, any consonant with the halanta, it combines with its adjacent varna. Okay, this here you can see the visarga that has elided, visarga lopa sandhi. So you can already spot these sandhis out. Okay, and in the second line, if you can see, so immediately you see a rutva sandhi happening because you see a ra here. So sthanu achala, a rutva sandhi is happening, sthanu rachalaha. And then again a same sandhi, that same ukara sandhi that happened between these words. So as you can see, the same sandhis keep on repeating themselves again and again. I hope by this point you are all well practiced with all the common sandhis at least. And if not, then you always have the PDF sheet along with these videos that you can download from the link in the description box. It have all the word by word breakdown and all the sandhi niyam sandhi rules for your own practice. But now let us move on to the decoding of the shloka. And see, just like we did in the previous shloka. In the previous shloka also, we started with a namapada. Nainam chindanti shastrani nacha enam dakhyati pavakaha. So enam was the main sarvanama that was pointing towards the self. Okay, so we did our decoding anchored around this particular word enam. And the same thing we are doing here also, that we are starting with the common, with the anchor sarvanama ayam. Okay, because all the ayam in the shloka, again they are pointing towards the same, that same implicit self, the Atman, the Atma. Okay, there we had enam. Why? Because there we were talking about the self in the form of an object. There this Atman was the karma, the object. But here in the shloka, we are talking about the self from the point of view of the Prathama Vibhakti, the first word case, because this is the subject of whatever is happening in the shloka. So I hope this is clear. And this ayam, from which pratipadika this is coming? So again, the same pratipadika, idam. So there, this idam pratipadika was in Dvitiya Vibhakti, changed into enam. Here it is in Prathama Vibhakti, changed into ayam. And why the pullinga form? Why the masculine gender form? Well, simply because it is pointing towards the self. And self in Sanskrit is Atman. Since Atman, this is a masculine gender, it is a pullinga pratipadika. So the sarvanama, the adjectives, all the words that will be connected to this Atman will also take the pullinga, the masculine gender form. Okay, so all these things by this stage are pretty self-explanatory. That is why I'm not spending too much time on it. And see, now when we move on, so I'm asking Kidrishaha is what? That you are explaining I am this self as what? So since this particular shloka is a continuation of what we were talking in the previous shloka. In the previous shloka we said that the weapons cannot cut the self and the fire cannot dahati, cannot burn the self. The water cannot kledayanti, it cannot wet, it cannot make the self wet. Nor the wind marutaha enam shoshiyati, that nor the wind can make it dry. So this is what we saw in the previous shloka. And continuing in that same angle, we are saying that this self, I am achedyaha, adakyaha, akledyaha, ashosyaha. And this translates as that the self cannot be cut, the self cannot be burnt, this self cannot be wetted, and this self cannot be dried up. So we are literally repeating the very idea from the previous shloka. The only difference is in the previous shloka we were using these kriya pada, chindanti, dahati, kledayanti, shoshayati, and here we are using kridanta, achedyaha, adakhyah, akledhyah, ashoshyah. So we are using the same very verb root, same very dhatu here also. So chid dhatu, that means to cut through. Dah dhatu, that means to burn. Kled dhatu, that means to be wet, and shush dhatu, that means to be dry. So we are using the same dhatu, same verbal roots, but here we are creating a kridanta. And to create a kridanta, we know that we require a suffix, a pratyaya. And the technical term for such pratyaya is krit pratyaya. That the suffixes that attaches themselves with the dhatu to create a new pratipadika. So those are called krit pratyaya. And that end result, that end pratipadika is called kridanta. So all these are technical names. Basically the idea is this, that dhatu plus krit pratyaya, this creates a kridanta. And we have gone through so many kridantas in the first chapter of Gita and up till now in the second chapter of Gita also. And so in our case here, all these four dhatus, they are being modified using nyat. This is the krit pratyaya that we are using. And when we modify these dhatus using nyat pratyaya, so the kridanta that we get are chid, this becomes chedya, dah, this becomes dakhya, klid, this becomes kledya, and shush, this becomes shoshya. Okay, these are the new kridanta formed. But what do these new kridanta, what do these new pratipadika, they mean, they imply? So for that we have to know what is this nyat pratyaya used for. So nyat pratyaya is used to modify the dhatu in the sense should be done. So whatever dhatu, whatever action that dhatu is representing, nyat pratyaya it modifies in the sense that should be done. So for example, chid, this means to cut through. So this pratipadika chedya, this will describe anything that should be cut through. Okay, the same thing goes for dah. Dah dhatu means to burn. So dakhya, this will describe anything that should be burnt. And so kledya, this will denote anything that should be wet. Shoshya will denote anything that should be dried up. Okay, so that is the sense these new kridanta are giving. And see, at this point, you can also ask this question, that's this chid, why it is changing into chedya when I am combining it with nyat pratyaya. So what other changes this suffix is causing to this dhatu? Because here I can see a pattern that for this nyat pratyaya, only this portion, only the ya, only this ya portion, it gets added. As you can see here, chedya, dakhya, kledya, and shoshya. So we can clearly see that out of this nyat pratyaya, only this part, ya part, it gets added to the dhatu. But apart from this also, there are few changes that we can see because this chid is changing into chedya. Dah, this is changing into dakhya. So a dirgha a is coming. So some changes are happening here. So understand this, that any pratyaya in Sanskrit, it basically have two components. The name of the pratyaya, that will have two components. It will have an actual content, the actual content that gets added to either the dhatu or the pratipadika, and the next component is it letters. It letters, they mean indicatory letters, indications. They are just there for the indication or for maybe intonation purpose or for helping us to pronunciate them. Okay, so for example, in this tumun pratyaya, the tum, this component is the actual content that gets added, and this u and the na, these are the it letters, the indicatory letters. And to see another example, so this very suffix that we are using now, nyat suffix. So in this nyat suffix, the ya, this is the actual content, it is the actual component that gets added to the dhatu. And the na and the ta, they are again the it letters, the indicatory letters. And as you can guess, these it letters, indicatory letters, they are just there to indicate the nature of the pratyaya, the behavior of the pratyaya. That if such indicatory letters are there, this pratyaya will cause so and so changes in the dhatu or the pratipadika. Okay, so in our suffix here, this ya is the actual content that gets added. That is what we saw here. Chedya, dakhya, kledya, and shoshya. And this na and this ta, they are just here as an it letter to indicate something. So what is it? I don't want to go deeper into that because this is again a topic for a separate video, and in future I am going to bring a video in which I will talk about these things because once you know the logic, then whatever pratyaya you see, you can guess the end result of it. You can guess how this will modify the dhatu. So I'm in future I'm going to bring a video on this. If I start to elaborate that very topic in this particular video, then this will stretch to quite some time. So I won't do that. But just to give you a hint, due to this na it letter in the pratyay, this chi, this e is changing into a. The guna of the vowel happens. So e, this becomes a. The guna happens. Same thing you can see here. The klid, this changed into kled. Shush, this changed into shosh because the guna of u is o. So guna happens. And there is also another rule that is indicated by this it letter that says that the penultimate is the second last. The penultimate a should become dirgha a. That is what is happening with this daha. So daha is changing into daha. So when we are using this nyat pratyay, these it letters are what tells us how I should modify these dhatus to create a new kridanta, new pratipadika. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a taste of there is an entire mechanism that guides all these things. It is not random. And in a separate video, I'll talk about this thing a bit more elaborately. But anyways, from those dhatus using nit pratyay, we got these 4 kridantas and they all describe something that should be done in that sense. That should be cut through, that should be burnt, that should be wet and that should be dry. So in this sense. But now in the shloka, I am negating their meaning. So basically I am saying na chedya or na dakhya. This na chedya, this is going to describe something that cannot be cut through. Na dakhya, this is going to describe something that cannot be burnt. And na kledya will describe something that cannot be wet, and na shoshya that cannot be dried up. So now I am negating the meaning. And I've spoken about this thing that when we negate some word in Sanskrit, so this we can explain that negation using this vigraha, na chedya iti achedya. And this negation happens under nai samasa, nai tatpurus samasa. So this is actually comes under the mechanism of samasa, that instead of writing this entire vigraha, we combine it into the single word achedya. Okay, so that is what we see here. Don't get confused that this chedya, if I add a, so the word should be achedya, but here it is achedya. So you see an additional cha there, achedya. Well, this additional cha, this happens due to again some internal sandhi. And to simply understand what is this sandhi, if after a riswa a, if after a short a, you have a cha. Okay, so if this happens, if after a short a you have a cha, so in between them you get a tukagama, you get a ta. Okay, but the word does not become achedya. Why? Because this incoming ta, this again undergoes a sandhi, that is the shutva sandhi. And due to that shutva sandhi, this ta is finally, it changes into cha. So in simple words, you can understand that if after a short a, there is a cha, so in between them, you get a chakara, you get a cha. That is why we don't get achedya, we get achedya, we get a cha here. So this is only happening with this. Here we are simply adding a, adakhya, akledya, ashoshya. Okay, so that is it. I'm just explaining because you can have this doubt that how come this cha is coming. So for that. But now I hope you got an idea that how these 4 words are coming from the same verbal roots that we saw in the previous shloka. There we were just changing the dhatu into a normal kriya pada using what purusha, what lakara, what vachana. And here we are using the dhatu to create a kridanta. And kridantas are more often than not used as an adjective for whatever subject we are describing. So here we are describing the self. So this self cannot be cut, this self cannot be burnt, this self cannot be wetted, and this self cannot be dried up. This is the same idea that we saw in the previous shloka. So I hope this entire statement is clear. I am, this is the Prathama Vibhakti Ekvachana. So all the adjectives, these are not basically adjectives, these are again complements, right? We have also seen the difference between adjective and complements. So these are more like the complements to this word. We are describing this subject using these words, some additional detail. But anyways, they are also taking the same Vibhakti Vachana form as you can see here. So I hope this all is clear. And now with the second line, Krishna is again restating the nature of the self. So basically he is summing up all the different points that he has already spoken on in the previous shlokas. But anyways, let's go through them. Krishna is saying that I am this self is Nitya. Nitya means ever present. Okay, it's always present, Shashvataha. And this self is Sarvagataha. Sarvagataha is basically Sarvam Gataha iti Sarvagataha. That Gataha is gone. Okay, gone or reached. And Sarva is everywhere. So something that has reached everywhere, something that has gone everywhere. So in a way, something that is all pervading. Okay, something that pervades everything there is. So the self is ever present and the self is also all pervading, Sarvagataha. Then he says the self is Sthanuhu. Sthanuhu is something that is stable, something that is firm. Okay, Because this self is the only substratum. This is the only substratum upon which the entire manifestation of change is built upon. The entire manifestation of time and space, this is formed on this very substratum. So the self is sthanhu. It is stable, it is firm. And you can see all these different words, they are basically reinforcing each other. So if something is ever present, it should also be all pervading, right? And if it is all pervading, then it should be firm, it should be stable. And if it is stable, then it goes without saying that it is achalaha. Achalaha means na chalaha. See again that nai tatpurus samasa. That na chalaha iti achalaha. That's something that cannot move, immovable. And why immovable? Because see, the movement, this is a construct of time and space. What we consider movement is an object from this time and space, it went to another space and some time has passed. So when that self is beyond time and space, when it is all pervading, when it is everywhere, so where will it go? So there is no question of any movement in that because it is all pervading, it is ever present and it is beyond the construct of time and space. So of course it is immovable. This achalaha can also be understood as something that is immutable. And that again we are seeing with this same thing, that if it cannot be cut through, if it cannot be made wet, if it cannot be dried up, then of course it is avyaya. It is immutable. It is changeless. So it can be understood in that term also. But the literal meaning we get is achalaha, immovable. Okay. And lastly, the self is sanatanaha. And sanatanaha is something that is eternal. And this eternal also signifies the fact that that self is the very same self that was experienced by the rishis in the Vedika times, that was experienced by the rishis in the post-ancient times, like someone like Adi Shankaracharya. And then that self is the same that was experienced in the sages, in the enlightened souls of our modern times. Suppose, say, someone like Ramana Maharishi. So that goes without saying that that self is eternal. It is ever present and it is that same thing. So this eternal is also reinforcing that fact that the self is the same, whether it was in Vedic time or modern time, it is the same. Whether it is experienced by the enlightened souls of our land, India, or it is experienced by the enlightened souls of other nations, of other places. So it is not time and place bound. So that is the sense here. Okay, so I hope this statement is also clear. And again, all these complements, all these words are again in the Prathama Vibhakti Ekvachana form. Okay, so with this now we come at the Anvaya, the translation. So let us quickly go through that also. So Krishna is saying, Ayam achedyaha, the self cannot be cut. The self is adakyaha, it cannot be burnt. It is akledya, nor it can be wetted. And it is ashoshyaha, nor it can be dried up. Okay. Why? Because he has already told us the true nature of self, that is ayam tu nityaha, that the self is ever present. It is sarvagataha, it is all pervading. It is sthanuhu achalaha, it is stable and it is immovable. And lastly, it is sanatanaha, it is eternal. It is not time or space bound. Okay, so this is the entire meaning of the shloka. I hope everything we discussed in the shloka is clear. As for the point we took for that suffix and how it modifies a dhatu or a pratipadika, I will create a separate video and very soon I'll bring it on my channel. But apart from that, download that PDF sheet, go through the sandhis, practice all those sandhis. Now you also have that Ashtadhyayi Sutras sheet. So you can refer those sandhis as to what their Ashtadhyayi Sutras are. So I hope some of you are at least going through that sheet also. All is there in the description box. You can download everything from there. But having said that, I'll meet you in another video with another shloka. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punah milamaha.